Julie Galvin from the Galvin Growth Group.
Hi, and I'm Dr. Liz Snyder, also from the Galvin Growth Group.
And we're here for our third episode where we are discussing the book Untangled by Dr. Lisa Damour. It's a book on adolescent girls and the 7 developmental strands that they go through in order to successfully navigate adolescence and launch into young adulthood. We've had a lot of fun reading a chapter each week, and then Dr. Snyder and I coming together and discussing it. This week, we're going to discuss chapter 2, which is called Joining a New Tribe.
Yes, and this chapter, right, is all about girls, right? They've parted from childhood and they're moving on to their friends, their tribe, right? What is important to them. And the big theme of this chapter is like loyalty to those friends, right? And that's what I found that resonated with me the most, right, in this chapter. And I remember being in middle school and like willing to do anything for my friends, right? Like take the blame, tell some lies, like get into trouble. Like my friends were like as close to me as my family was, right? And so willing to do anything for them. And this chapter really covers that, right? Like how girls are so loyal and how they can, you know, maybe become mean or do some things that parents might not expect their little girls to do, right? Like in this age, and it's really normal, you know, for girls to kind of do that. And it's typical, and we want them to be parting from their family a little bit and making these really important friendships, right? These friendships are going to support them through the rest of adolescence. They're going to help them develop really great social skills, conflict resolution, help them develop a sense of assertiveness. So these are really great things that these girls are doing at this age. But the transition to finding the tribe can be a little rough, especially, you know, if they can't quite get it right the first time.
I do. I think that any of us who navigated adolescence, those of us like you and I, Dr. Snyder, who have worked in middle school, and those of us who have parented middle school girls have realized just how mean middle school girls can be at times. But I think when we read this chapter, this concept of loyalty really gives us some good context to understand why it happens at that age. And thankfully, by about 10th grade, they navigate out of that, and they are better able to be assertive, and they're more strongly separated from their parents. But I think it's at this age in grade 7, they're still pulling away from childhood, which is what we talked about last week. They're not quite as, you know, sure-footed at that point. And I think that makes them more vulnerable to being mean, being loyal, desperately clinging to those friendships as they're separating from their parents.
Absolutely. You know, oftentimes in psychology, we talk about this idea of in groups and out groups, right? And you form a really tight-knit group by kind of identifying an out group. And, you know, it's a little bit of an unhealthy way to form that in group, but this is kind of a natural human instinct and kind of one of the first ways middle school girls do this, right? Like, we can be close because maybe we'll make fun of these other girls, or we won't talk to these other girls, right? And that helps us form an intimate relationship where we know we have each other's backs because there's this other group, right? And so kind of overcoming that, you know, she talks about developing more mature things to talk about rather than just making fun of other girls and things like that. So this is definitely an age where they're navigating all of that. And you're right, it's somewhat normal. It's kind of well known that girls are mean, although boys can also be really mean at this age, right? But, you know, we're focusing on the girls in this book. So I think it's normal, but there are definitely some things that parents should look out for, some tips she gives to kind of help guide parents in this time to make sure that the girls continue to develop typically, right, and maybe don't go into more of a problem area with some of these social skills.
I agree with you, Dr. Snyder. This chapter just seemed to have a lot of great strategies for parents on what you can do, because I think as we've seen the meanness happen in girls, sometimes like we can acknowledge it, but we're not sure how we can help the girl prevent it or navigate it. And I thought Dr. Damour did a great job of just giving us some really useful tips that we can use to help support the girls as they go through this. And one of them was supporting quality over quantity of friends, and that idea of popularity and wanting a bunch of friends, and the different kinds of popularity that they are, like perceived popularity, which may not always be like the nicest girls, but girls might be scared of them, and so everybody kind of falls in line.
That powerful aspect, right? She kept using that word powerful. They're not, they're well liked, but only because they have this power. They're not kind.
Yes, exactly. Versus the other kind of popularity where they're well-liked girls. They may not have that power that the other kind of group of popular girls have, but they are well-known and well-liked because of their kindness. So emphasizing kindness, emphasizing quality of friendships versus quantity, I thought was a really good tip.
Mm-hmm. And I like how she, kind of had that empathy for the girls too. Like, it makes sense that they're drawn to those popular, powerful girls, because it's kind of like an automatic, tribe. Yeah, if you're popular, you kind of have that social capital, right? You can use it. People aren't going to kind of make fun of you probably as much. You have that power. So it's very tempting to kind of go that right route, even though those girls aren't necessarily well liked because of the social capital that comes with it. So empathizing with your daughter, being understanding of why she might want to go that route while still really valuing and making it clear, that kindness and, maturity are kind of the routes to go rather than that meanness and that power.
And I think what you're touching on there too is the pressure of being popular. If they're going for that power and that perceived popularity, there's a lot of pressure to maintain that, and somebody can be easily toppled from that. And then what do they have? However, if they've spent their time building good quality friendships, they're less likely to lose that place on that pedestal, and they've developed true, deeper friendships that don't have quite so much pressure to maintain that position with.
Right. Oftentimes, someone who's considered popular might have a lot of really shallow friendships and not, a really meaningful one. And she talks about in the book, and I know it's your philosophy too, right, to have the importance of having at least one really good friend, a deep, meaningful friendship, someone that's going to be there for you, someone you can call, someone you can hang out with, right? The importance of that. And, sometimes as parents, you might not realize that one deep friendship isn't there. The girl maybe seems to have a lot of friends, but none of them are really meaningful.
Right. I have, and it was interesting to see that reinforced in the book, because I've always felt like if you have one good friend, you have somebody to eat lunch with, you have somebody to go to the social activities, you can have somebody to look forward at school rather than being lost in a sea of students that you don't know. So and that seems manageable to me, right? I like to have one good friend. And so she encourages the girls and the kids to get involved in extracurriculars. That school is not just going to class and coming home and studying, but having other interests, getting involved in extracurriculars through school and outside of school to develop some of those genuine friendships that are not just based on social cachet in the school building.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is such an important point that, right, she makes for the girls and for the parents. And I agree, right? I think it's a really important thing, part of the chapter for this book for parents to pay attention to.
Yeah. One thing that I liked too was that she talked about being assertive. And so when girls are mean, that we can help our girls like process all of that, to be like, well, it's not just us teaching everything to the girls all the time and seeing everything as a teaching moment. And I love that she emphasizes that, because I've seen a lot of girls over the years, especially clients that I've worked with, get really turned off by the parent or the mom who wants to see everything as a teaching moment and listen to me, this is how you need to navigate it. But instead, kind of aligning with your daughter and being a support and asking her, well, what did you think about when so-and-so treated somebody that way? And how would you have felt? And what could you have done differently? Or how could you help support your friend? And I think by kind of engaging in that conversation, it's not putting the girl down, but it's eliciting her input and her perceptions about what do you think about all this? And how could things have been done differently? And I just think it's a really powerful way to align with your daughter and help her through these difficult situations. And the conversations that you have with her can help apply to new ones when they come up down the road for her.
Right, absolutely. Like planting those seeds, I think, is so critical because we know that teenagers are not just going to listen to everything their parents say. Like, I don't think you should be friends with this person. Drinking is bad. Like they're not going to, right? They're not going to listen to that. You have to kind of instead make these kind of one-off remarks, kind of lead by example, talk about, right, the things you see on TV or social media or observations you make, but keeping it, on a really fine line of not overdoing it, just kind of throwing these remarks out there and hoping that over time you're planting these really great seeds that will get your daughter thinking critically about her friends, about how she's acting, about how they're acting, and the decisions that she's going to be making as she works her way toward being an adult and toward being independent, where she won't always have you there, to kind of tell her what to do. So it's really important to develop, her own critical thinking skills.
Right. And that's why I like these ideas that she has. They're really positive, right? Like we're acknowledging that seventh grade girl meanness and the loyalty can be really difficult on the girls, difficult on the parents. But here's some really positive ways that you can really pour into your daughter and invest in that relationship and back and forth communication so that you guys can navigate not only this stage, but the future developmental strands that they're going to go through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a good chapter. So I'm glad that we had a chance, right, to talk about it today. And as always, right, you can head over to our blog to get some more thoughts on what we had about the chapter. You can head over to our website, like and share this video. It was really great talking about it today with you, Julie.
Same here, Liz. And next week, we'll move into chapter 3, which is called Harnessing Emotions, which should be another interesting chapter for us.
All right. We'll see you then.